what kind of organizations seek your expertise on Caribbean Caribbean in the U.S. The Caribbean in the U.S. diaspora?
Well, most of our businesses are corporate that comes out of corporate America because most of them are doing our Caribbean or wire service that are going to the Caribbean. So they're looking to tap into the media through the wire service to get their message out. So that's mainly our big business. The other side of our business are companies that are in the Caribbean that want to tap into the Caribbean diaspora. And we've done a lot of work with companies like Quartz Caribbean, Lime, Digicel, Sagicor, all of these big brands in the Caribbean that really are interested in tapping into the Caribbean diaspora market, especially here in the U.S. So those are some of our clientele. Of course, it varies depending on what exactly we're doing, which brand we're promoting. For instance, Invest Caribbean, that's a whole different clientele, a whole different sort of lineup there. But it really varies. But mostly, we're a communications company, so most of our clients are seeking us out for communication services.
I should take a break, but I wanna tap in. I wanna ask you this question before we go on a break. Talking about thinking big and having courage and the absence of fear and so on. Founder of the Carib ID, you led a battle against the U.S. Census for a count of Caribbean nationals, and you pushed for a bill in the U.S. Congress and Senate for Caribbean nationals to have their own category on U.S. Census forms. Tell us what triggered this initiative.
Well, what triggered it was, I think it was the first year after President Bush had signed the Caribbean American Heritage Month bill into law, and so here we were. We had our own Caribbean American Heritage Month, and everybody was excited and jumping up and down. And I had just started the news and everything, and I sent an email to the U.S. Census, and I said, what about the U.S. Census? Are you guys going to issue the data now in Caribbean American Heritage Month? Because they do this for every other month, Hispanic Heritage and Asian Heritage and Black History Month. And they told me straight up they did not have the data. And you can imagine my surprise and my shock. And then that turned into anger. Like, what do you mean you don't have the data? Oh, well, we don't really collect data on Caribbean population because we don't have a category on the census. And I said, you're telling me I pay my taxes and I don't exist? And so we went back and forth with that and really started doing the research again on that in terms of how it happens for everybody. How did the Hispanics get theirs? How did the Asians get theirs? And it came down to the fact that you had to have a category on the forms in order for this data to be compiled. And that's really how the fight started. And it was a very tough battle. It's still a tough battle. We haven't gotten it yet, but they said that for the next census, they'll be testing it. They'll probably put it under African Americans so people can write in their country of origin. But it's a real major disservice that they do to us, especially people who are in the media and in communications companies that understand the need for data. And if you don't have the data, then you can't market. If you can't market, then you're wasting time. Hispanics have grown tremendously because they have all the data. We don't have any real data, and it's a big problem. And Carib ID is definitely something that is needed. I'm just at the point now where I'm tired. I'm really tired of that fight, and I hope somebody else can pick it up and carry the baton because I think I have done more than my fair share of battle with the government on that issue.
Let's take a break. We are back with Felicia Persaud. Felicia, you're also an immigration columnist in the New York Amsterdam News. How has that position helped you in your fight for immigration, for Caribbean immigration?
Well, actually, it was the reverse. The fight started before the column. I became a journalist covering immigration because I was an immigrant. I had my own personal immigration battles that I was dealing with at the time because I was waiting for my employment visa to come true, and it was taking forever. And I was ended up in a category just like Donald Trump was saying now that there are so many quote unquote illegal aliens. So I was essentially one of those illegal aliens, if you want to call it that, at one point. And it started a personal fight in me that I stood up. I did not give in to fear again. I was lobbying. I teamed up with the Caribbean Immigrant Services and Erwin Clare and Winston Tucker, and we went all over the country and talked about amnesty that they say is such a bad word. We talked about why all these millions of people needed to be legalized. We went to the Congress and lobbied them. We marched down Eastern Parkway in the Labor Day parade. We were on radio, so we were active on the immigration front way before it was cool. In fact, at the time, people sort of wanted to shut it down and said, "Oh, what are you talking about? These aliens and amnesty? It's not going to happen." And and when I did become a green card holder and then eventually a U.S. citizen, I still believe and take time out of my weekly schedule, which gets very hectic at times. But I have made a commitment that I will keep that column and keep writing it because I feel it's a way to give back and help other immigrants who are in that predicament now, and that's really my way of giving back and keeping this issue on the front burner. And I will always be passionate about immigrants and immigration reform in this country.
When you first started to push for this bill in Congress, to pass in Congress, U.S. Congress and the Senate, what was your greatest worry?
Well, I remember one time we got to the Congress, and I was an undocumented immigrant at the time. My biggest worry was, what are they going to do if they find out? I was like, what do we have to show ID here? How do we get in? But luckily, we got in. We were there to lobby, and at the time, it really wasn't a big deal. Nobody asked too many questions, and so I think, it's that sort of fearlessness that I had. And I think a lot of people in our community, especially, don't have that in terms of when you talk about immigration reform. We have so many people, yet it's only a Latino issue. It's only the Latinos that you see out there lobbying for this. I remember I was at a protest a couple of years ago in Brooklyn, and I was the only person who was there with all the Latinos, and I held up my sign and said Caribbeans do need immigration reform. And everybody thought it's like, oh, it was sort of like a new thing for them. It's like, oh, Caribbean people do need immigration. We had no clue because we're never out there. We're just like way in the background. We're hiding in churches. We're praying, and even the pastors, some of them are taking advantage of our women and children in these churches because they know their status. So I think we have to be more vigilant, and we have to get out of this darkness and this fear and stand up. And, like we say with Carib ID, really stand up and be counted.
Do you ever think, Felicia, do you ever think about fear at all? I mean, I am just curious. I'm listening to you here tonight, and I've read your bio, and there seemed to be this, intimacy with courage that you have. And I'm wondering, where did this all come from? Is this woman, this grandmother of yours who raised her 9 children? Did she have a very big impact on you or influence on you?
I think she did. I think she did in a way, and I think she's still with me. Like my spiritual advisor says, the ancestors are always with you. It is
Yes.
their strength and their shoulders that we stand upon. So I believe, every day I wake up, I pray and I call on the ancestors to be with me and walk with me and guide me. And I believe that I stand on their strength. And it's not that I don't get fearful. It's not that I'm not human and that I don't hurt or I don't feel or I'm not scared. There are moments. Everybody has their moments. There are moments when I cry, when I don't know how it's going to happen, when I feel like I've bitten off more than I can chew, when I feel like I'm sacrificing my professional life versus my personal life. You know, there are moments of that. But then then you're back on the horse again, and you have to believe that this is a destiny that's been written. And if it was easy, then everybody would do it. So maybe that's my calling, like they
I like
say,
that.
to whom much is given, much is expected, and maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I just trust in God, and I say, Father, it is your will. Let it be done, and just give me the strength to do it. And somehow it happens, and it gets done, and you're just amazed. You're almost like if you're looking into yourself and you're looking on, and you don't even understand how can this happen? How is it happening? But it is happening, and it's happened, and you've done it, and it just is an amazing. It's sort of a miracle sometimes to me.
You've worked with Caribbean heads of state. You've worked with the likes of Sir Richard Branson and many large and reputable companies. What is what is one particular quality you have or you believe you have that gets you into the door or gets you to work with these people?
Well, first of all, they like smart people, and I think I'm pretty blessed with being smart. The other thing is I'm very humble.
Hmm.
I don't have an attitude. I'm not arrogant. I don't go in there talking a whole lot and acting like a know-it-all. And I'm there to listen, and I'm very much believe that you learn something new every day. So that is something that I think that I believe, helps me
Hmm.
in terms of dealing with people and just really listening. Because people, a lot of the times, they just want you to listen to them and then tell them, what is it that you're going to do. So I believe that those are the qualities, and I try to stay very humble and very much.
And what was the trigger that caused you to want to work for yourself?
Well, it was really forced on me. After I basically fell out with the first digital media house that I set up in the Caribbean, and we had a falling out. I was essentially on my own. I had no job. I didn't know what I was going to do next. All I knew was that I had a skill. I didn't want to go back to doing a beat and running up and down covering stories for a newspaper every day, and that's really how Heartbeat News started. And from there, Cara Pure Wire, and then promotions for other companies. So it just really grew from there, and really it came out of trusting in God and believing that He will provide in those dark days when I didn't know how I was going to make this, how it was going to happen. I just believed and trusted and didn't give in to the fear. And I think that really was a key lesson, a critical juncture
Hmm.
in my life.
So, what have you learned about yourself as an entrepreneur?
I've learned that one thing you have to have is a lot of faith, a lot of faith, and really believing. Of course, then you also have to put in the work. I mean, sometimes I work 17-hour days.
Yes.
Uh, Sometimes it's a long journey. It's lonely. It gets very lonely. But you just have to believe and keep focusing and pushing ahead. And that's really what it is. And most of all, being creative. You got to be creative and
Mhm.
think outside the box.
By your definition of success, how would you rate yours?
I don't really think I'm successful at all. I mean, I'm my worst critic. I think it's so much more to go. But, people say, oh, well, you've done a whole lot. You're successful. I think I still have, a lot more to do and years to go.
What is your deepest concern, your deepest fear for the Caribbean community in the U.S. diaspora?
Well, first off, we're invisible. We really are invisible. When you look at us, we're not counted. There is no way to really tell our stories in numbers. We don't know how many people there are in this country. We don't know our buying power. We don't know anything. We're not out there. We're not considered a voting bloc because we're just part of a bigger bloc. So there is just this way where we have absolutely no power. And people without power, we know what the saying says, they can perish. And that is my biggest concern, is that our community continues to go downward instead of upward. And it's really a very scary, very sad thing to say, but we're more inward. We stick to ourselves, and we keep within our community instead of going out and creating relationships with other mainstream communities. And that is our biggest downfall.
You are intellectually curious. Is that an accurate statement?
I think so. I think you're absolutely right.
So when did this insatiable appetite with knowledge began for you?
Very little. I think when I started just, reading and being able to read, I really wanted to read everything voraciously. And that is what I did. And I think up to this day, I prefer to read more than look at television. Of course, America gets you corrupted in terms of that's all that there is at times. You want to eat and you turn the TV on, and that's where you're stuck for the next hour. But I think, I still try very much to stay abreast of especially foreign affairs and what is happening, and always learning something new in my field. I find even when I go to bed at night, I'm on my phone reading something new about the digital media, whether it's SEO or the next thing, or what's the new thing in mobile technology, and really trying to keep abreast, I think, of what it is, because it's just changing so fast. I mean, you can hardly keep up with what is happening out there.
What do you do for fun?
Oh, I actually like a lot of music. I love music, most forms of music, especially old music. I like country music. I like Neil Diamond, that sort of thing. But I love to eat out. I love to experience lots of different foods, different cultures, different restaurants. And that's really my big thing. I think that is something I totally enjoy and get off on. But I also love spending time with my family. They're my friends. I have very few friends, but my family really are my friends. And here now I'm between New York and Charlotte now. So now in Charlotte I have one friend, and so I end up hanging out with him all the time. And we go to the gym together and do things together. So it's a little. I think it's the little things that really matter most to me.
What are people surprised to learn about you when they get to know you?
I think they're surprised that I'm funny. That I'm very, very
Tell me
nice.
tell me about it.
I'm very, very sensitive. And one thing about me is that if you're my friend, you'll be my friend forever, because I'm very loyal and I'm very caring. And I think people are often surprised by that, because they see very tough. Sometimes they think I'm tough, and I'm such a hard person and probably difficult to get along with. But I'm the nicest person to get along with, and that's not just tooting my own horn, but I'm really a very nice, very cool, easygoing person, and very caring and very loving to people who are in my inner circle.
In the chat room, Clyde said, I agree that your destiny is written, and once you realize that, you will have the willpower to keep going. Felicia, you've traveled a lot. If you had to go to a favorite place with your favorite book, music, and drink, where would this place be? What would you be reading, listening to, and drinking?
That's a hard one. That's a hard question, because I still don't feel like I've been to everywhere that I want to be. I want to go to Marseille, France. I think that's a place that I really want to go, and probably be there with a good book. What book would I take? I think I would take V.S. Naipaul. I love V.S. Naipaul and his work. I also love a lot of the Caribbean older authors like Michael Anthony and Sam Salvon. And on music, I definitely have this favorite album that I play when I'm sort of in my mood and I'm melancholy, and that is Neil Diamond Moods. I think I would take that because I love this song called Captain Sunshine and Morningside, especially on that album. So those are like my favorite things to do. And what kind of food? I just love all kinds of food. So except there are some things that I just don't eat, like pork, and I don't do too much dairy. But I really do love experiencing cultures through food, and that is really how you get to learn about people and their different different makeup and different cultural nuances. Is really an exciting thing.
What inspires you?
What inspires me? I think I'm inspired by the fact that I have to survive and I have to I have to keep going. I don't have a choice. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have a trust fund. I don't have daddy to fall back on. I just have to do this. It has to work, and I'm not about to go into a 9 to 5 job. I don't think I'm going to survive after all these years and make that happen. So it has to work, and I think that is really what inspires me
Hmm.
every morning that I get up. This has to work, and you got to keep pushing forward. And there are days when you're very frustrated and nothing is happening, and what you want to happen, it doesn't happen in the timeline that you set and that you want it to be. But you just have to, like I say, trust, and that's what it comes down to. I think any entrepreneur who tells you otherwise, that it's an overnight success and it just happened so wonderfully, they're lying, because it doesn't. Everybody has their dark days and days when you don't know where the next account or the next money is going to come from. But it happens, and you just have to trust in God, and that's why I come back to the fact that it's all about faith. That your faith really grows as you grow as a person.
When are you most happy?
When am I most happy? That is also a very hard question. I think I'm happy. It varies. It depends on when or what I'm doing. But for instance, like I would say, like I was happy when our event was over in St. Martin. So there are things and instances that happen when I'm most happy. But I think when I'm most at peace is especially when I'm in the gym and I'm just like working out and not really focusing on anything in particular, and my brain is not going. I think that's really when I'm most at peace, and just really just being able to chill and hang with friends and family. That's really just shoot the breeze and just talk nonsense and be yourself. That's really when I'm happiest.
If you should look back on the arc of your career, what would you do differently if given a chance?
Maybe I'll get a job. Just focus on getting a job and just being a good employee. Because I see a lot of my friends, they have jobs and they're doing pretty good from where I sit. So I think maybe that's what I'll do. But like I said, your destiny, I believe it's something I've come to accept and realize and learn. It's written, and you can't run away from it. No matter what you do, you can apply for all the jobs. There was one point where I got frustrated, and I said, I need to get a job. Let me start applying for jobs. I got absolutely no response back. I said, okay, well, I get it. I hear what you say. Okay, no jobs. Let's do this. So I think that's what you just have to, you really have to understand that. Once you get to that level, then you release everything, and you believe that, Jah is your provider. He's going to make a way when you don't see a way. It's going to happen. And that's what I really do believe.
Where did this confidence in your spirituality come from?
There was a very dark moment. I was never as spiritual. I was always Catholic in upbringing and by birth, but never spiritual until a very dark time in my life when I went through a very terrible breakup in a relationship, and I almost thought I was, suicidal. I was at the point where I didn't think I wanted to live anymore. It was the end, and it's interesting. Joel Osteen, who's on television somehow at that moment, and there was a message, and his message was almost poignant with that. Was his message? It's like you have, a destiny, that this is not the end. God always has a new beginning for you, and tears just started pouring down, and I cried and cried, and I think from that day, that was the turning point in my life, for me spiritually. And it's been a constant growth process. I still follow Joel very much. I'm a big fan of what he says, but also I've come into the spirituality of realizing about the ancestors and understanding the role that they play and paying tribute to the ancestors. And all of these things have become a part of my life, and they have really helped me through some very dark times, of course. I've had, dark days since. I've battled with a terrible illness last year. I was almost on the verge of dying and surgery. And all of these things make you more aware of your humanity and of your life, and of realizing that, what, if God saved your life then, and he did it before, then you really have a purpose and a destiny, and you just have to listen. And I think that's really where the strength and the confidence comes from. It comes from above.
If you could go back in time, what would you tell your 16-year-old self?
To really not fall in love, to have no emotions, if that's possible, to just kind of work on that, and really make sure that you really stay focused and not get distracted. And I think that really is something that parents, especially fathers and mothers, need to teach their young daughters and young kids on a whole, really how they deal with life, and sexuality, and spirituality, and the whole relationship thing, and love, and all of these issues that parents don't usually talk about or want to talk about. And that you get information from other places. And I think that's really what I would have loved for somebody in my family or my parents to actually tell me, instead of just saying, "Oh, now you're a young lady, you need to act like a young lady, and and not get involved with boys." I mean, that's just nonsense. Because you grow up, and you're going to get involved in relationships. So how do you deal with that? And I think that is what the lessons that I feel that I missed as a child, from my parents especially.
What is the most challenging or painful story you've ever covered?
Oh, definitely 9/11. That was just a horrible time in 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 my life, and as a journalist, and of course the lives of so many people. When people were running away, we were going in, and had to be there for days, and covering this horrific tragedy, and talking to relatives and people who are looking for their missing loved ones, and listening to their stories, and crying with them. And really, it was such a draining, emotionally stressful time. And going there when it smelled like death everywhere, just a horrible, horrible time, I think, in my life. And it really changed me from what I wanted to I think it really helped me get out of the business in a way. It was something that said, I can't do this. I really can't do this anymore. You can't eat, you can't sleep. Everybody's stories are weighing on you, and somebody lost their wife and their daughter and everything, and you just you're human.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the most trying time in my life, in terms of being a journalist.
In the chat room, Claudette said, being a media powerhouse and a successful businesswoman, what advice would you give to women who are thinking of becoming entrepreneurs and being the CEO of their own companies?
Well, absolutely, you have to research what you're doing. Make sure that you totally know the market, know your business, and know what your next steps are. And of course, partner. Make sure that you're partnering with people, and also look at how do you access financing. That is critical, especially if you're going to grow. You're going to have a growth plan. Where do you start now? Where are you going 5 years from now? And be very careful of bringing people into your business as quote unquote partners and shareholders early on, because it is a rookie mistake that too many people make, especially women, when they feel, we need to give you 10% of our company to do X for sweat equity, essentially. I think that is something that I've learned as a very hard lesson. And I think it's something that I would share with women, especially looking to set up their own companies.
Felicia, you do not escape this question I ask every one of my guests. What makes you laugh out loud?
It depends. Jokes, obviously, silly jokes, sometimes sex jokes
Sex
make me.
jokes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very, very liberal person, so I have friends who say crazy things and share crazy jokes, and I think it's so hilarious half the time. So I think that's really what makes me really laugh and really have a good time, and but especially because most of my friends are guys, so they don't think it's 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 too bad, and they know that I don't think it's sexist, so that's good.
What's next for Felicia?
What's next is that we are really pushing this access to capital and loans that we're going to be partnering with two companies for. We're hoping to close that up and be able to promote it to our community and our small businesses within our community, because it's key for them to have access to capital. And that is something we're going to be promoting for our diaspora business owners. The next step to that, what I'd ideally like to see, is that we're able to raise funds to actually set up a fund where we can help small businesses in the Caribbean get access to capital, because that is the key, and that is not happening. Banks and governments are not providing access to capital in the region for many of these small entrepreneurs. There's so many of them, especially young people. They're coming out with such creative, innovative enterprises. I just saw this woman in St. Martin. She had a whole makeup line. I was so stunned. She couldn't be more than 26 years old. She has already launched her own makeup line and actually created a mineral makeup line. And I thought, this is the kind of person, if you want to help have access to capital to grow into a huge enterprise, that is really what I ideally would love to do, Selwood. So I think that would be my next goal, and something I'd love to focus on.
Well, when by the way, how do people get in touch with Invest?
Simple. It's a simple investcaribbeannow.com. You just log on to the website. We have contact information there. Everything is there. Information on the loans, on what we're offering and what we do. Everything we've done is also there. So investcaribbeannow.com. It's a great place and a great resource.
Thank you, Felicia. Thank you
My
very
pleasure.
much.
I am so honored, Selwyn. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure this hour. It just flew by. I didn't even
Yeah, I
realize.
know. You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good night. And this is Selwyn Collins saying thank you very much for listening in to our listeners. Fear not what fear whispers to you. Fear your obedience to it. Good night.